The next thing I want to talk about is absolute value. So first thing we need to talk about is working with negative symbols or opposite notation. So just as the same word in English can have a lot of different meanings, so can the same symbol in algebra. And I want to talk about the negative symbol. So first things first, if I write it between two numbers, it means subtraction. If I have it in front of a number, that just should be 1x. If I have it in front of a number, we read it as negative 8. If I have negative x, we read that as the opposite of x or negative x. If I have two negatives, right, we read that as the opposite of negative 2, which would be positive 2 if we simplified it, right? So there's lots of ways to look at the negative symbol. You just need to be careful. Additive inverses on the number line are numbers that when you add them together, add up to 0. So because 6 and negative 6 are the same distance from 0, right? Negative 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away from 0. And 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away from 0. One's just to the left and one's to the right. They're called additive inverses. And whenever I add additive inverses together, they're going to add up to 0. So the additive inverse of 8, what do I add to 8 to get to 0? I would add negative 8. What do I add to negative 7 to get to 0? I would add, so the additive inverse of this is negative 8. The additive inverse of negative 7, 7. 0 doesn't have an additive inverse, right? To negative y, I'd add y. And what would I add to the opposite of negative 12? Well, the opposite of negative 12 is actually positive 12. So my additive inverse would be negative 12. This is our additive inverse to the opposite of negative 12. The absolute value of a number is its distance from the origin, which is 0, right? And we denote absolute value with these two vertical bars. So for example, the absolute value of 7 is 7 because 7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away from the origin of our number line. And the absolute value of negative 5 is 5 because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away from the origin of the number line. I kind of like to think of the number line as home, right? When I'm here at work, I don't say, oh, I'm negative 7 miles from home. No, I'm just 7 miles from home. Distance is always positive. Two numbers that are the same distance from 0 are additive inverses, sometimes called opposites. And that makes sense because if I add them together, I get back to 0. They undo each other, right? I go 3 steps to the right and then 3 steps to the left and I'm home, right? They undo each other. So here's the formal definition of absolute value in a few examples. I want you to know that we treat the absolute value like parentheses. So you want to simplify those first. So here I have the absolute value of negative 3, which is 3. The absolute value of 5, which is 5. Here I'm asking for the opposite of the absolute value of negative 4. So I have to simplify the absolute value of negative 4, which would give me 4 with a negative symbol left over. So it's negative 4. And the absolute value of 0 is 0 because we're already home. If I'm home, I'm 0 miles from home. So let's go ahead and simplify a few examples. The absolute value of 3 is going to be 3. The absolute value of negative 44 is going to be 44. The absolute value of 0 is 0. The opposite of the absolute value of negative 7, I'm going to simplify that first. That gives me a negative 7, so negative 7. 3x when x is 2. What do I want to do here? Well, this is just our first example of substitution. I want to make sure we get really comfortable working with variables. So this is asking what's the absolute value of 3 times x, well, x is 2. So 3 times 2. So I'm going to simplify this. That 3 times 2 is 6. So the absolute value of 6 is 6. I want to know the absolute value of m. when m equals 10. M's just a variable, so I'm going to plug in 10 for m. So that would give me the absolute value of negative 10, which is just 10. Let's go ahead and solve a few problems with absolute value. So I need to simplify my absolute values first, right? This would give me 5 times 4, which is 20. Negative 14 over the absolute value of 7, that gives me 14 over 7, which is just 2.